Hi, and welcome to this week's Life Lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. This week, we are talking all about emotional safety. Now, do you seek out complete emotional safety or protection in your relationships or other vital areas of your life, such as your career or business? Maybe you hate the idea of feeling emotionally vulnerable or exposed, and so you run a mile from any relationships or people or situations where you think you may be triggered. Well, in this teaching, we're going to be exposing what we call the emotional safety myth and explaining why everything you've been told about emotional vulnerability, emotional safety, and emotional protection is a lie. Okay, David, so what is your view on emotional safety?
I love these subjects because this is where we can strap ourselves down.
Yeah.
And I can really challenge you to think slightly differently, change your perception. So I do not believe there is such a thing called emotional safety. I do not believe there's something called emotional protection. And this hits right at the heart of the Wu Wei wisdom teaching. We're back to 101 stuff. And if I can just pass this teaching on to you, we talk about life changing. This is life changing. Every video I say this. Do you really sit down and think about it? You are the creator of your emotions. You are not the victim. How can you be safe from something that you're creating? It's nonsensical. You can't create something. It's like creating a monster and then the monster attacking you. You can't be protected against something that you're creating.
So, but I imagine you work with a lot of clients on this particular subject. And what are the issues or the misunderstandings they have around this? Can you give me some examples?
This is perhaps the number one thing. They don't come with this saying, can I be emotionally protected, David? Will you help me emotionally protect? But when you look at how they've set up, such as pleasing people, for instance, why do you have to please people? Because you don't like the feeling. Stop people criticizing me. David, I do worry about what other people think about me. David, I am concerned about this. David, when we look into it, when we go through what it is, it's always because of the feeling. I feel scared. I feel frightened. I feel vulnerable. One of my clients said to me today, I am emotionally vulnerable. I said, how can you be emotionally vulnerable? Well, it's just the feeling. It's just the feeling. Second client today, just today, I am emotionally upset. This is emotional for me. You don't understand. But I do understand because we all experience these emotions. Not one person. One client said last week, David, my emotions are much worse than anyone else's. They don't realize I'm absolutely vulnerable with my emotions. People should treat me differently. And this is why all of this subject is about you creating your emotions. And it really is that deep. And a lot of my clients, I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot, but this is so important. A lot of my clients will say this to me. Of course, I understand that. But do you accept it? Does that part of your mind that we call the inner child accept that they create their emotions?
So what you're saying is when all the various clients come to you with saying they feel exposed or vulnerable, or they're people pleasing, or they're trying to get people to like them because they don't want to feel judged or criticized or not good enough or not lovable, they are all these various scenarios are all built on the premise that they don't want to experience the red light feelings, those painful and uncomfortable emotional feelings. They want to protect themselves from those feelings.
Exactly. And what they do, because they do not accept fully, and maybe this is you, please think about it. because they do not accept that they are creating the emotion, whether it's frightened, whether it's scared, whether it's vulnerable, whether it's jealous, whatever it is, they do not accept that they are creating the emotion, then what they do is they try and control or manipulate external events and people so that they do not experience the emotion. But they still experience the emotion. So they spend their life trying to manipulate, juggling hot potatoes, I think you said a couple of weeks ago. They try and get everything right so they don't experience their emotions. They don't accept that they create the emotions.
Even if we create those emotions, I suppose it's quite natural because those emotions are real. When we create them, they are real. They are uncomfortable. They are yucky. And it's quite natural not to want to experience them.
So why don't you look at why you're creating them?
Because what we do is we blame the other person, or we blame the situation, or we blame the scenario that we think might happen and that we want to avoid because we don't want to experience the red light feeling.
That's exactly the point. How have you ever said, well, if it wasn't for you, if it wasn't for them, if it wasn't for the way he looked at me, if it wasn't for the way they treated me, if it wasn't for this, if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for that, they use words like, he triggered me, she triggered me, I was triggered. See, so all of the time, what they're trying to do is to control what I call the external. They're not trying to control the internal. And please let me say this before you sharpen your pencils and start writing in. I am not saying you shouldn't have emotions. I am not saying emotions are bad. I'm saying emotions are fantastic, your best asset, but you create them. That's what I'm saying. So when you take full responsibility and ownership, when you're accountable for your emotions, this is a complete change in your perception. This flips the way you look at life. Instead of looking and blaming someone else, you can start to look at why you created it. And that takes you down to what I always say in these videos, your belief system. What do you believe? Why do you believe it? And that's where you have to be, because that's the way that you live an emotionally balanced life. And that's what Wu Wei wisdom is all about you flourishing, you living in harmony, you living in your flow. That's what we want for you. We don't tell you what your flow is. I know you know what your flow is, but you move out of your flow because you're doing this tap dance around your emotions.
So if I make the leap of imagination or the leap of faith or the acceptance, if I accept that I create my emotions, that's the first step. And I take self-responsibility. So I don't blame my partner. I don't blame a situation. I don't blame something I've imagined in my head or like a worst case scenario outcome. If I take self-responsibility, is it possible for me to achieve for myself emotional safety and protection? Or is that just is that a nonsense? Is it a fairy tale?
Well, for me, I believe it's a nonsense, because how can you be safe from emotions that you're creating? So if you accept, just even if you're listening to this, just to yourself now, accept that I create all of my emotions, even good emotions. You know, last week we talked about love, happiness, joy, peace, or red light emotions, anger, frustration, resentment, stress. If you're creating those, how can you be safe from those emotions that you're creating? The emotion might be the correct emotion, but look at the belief and the reasoning why you create the emotion. Let me give you for instance. As one of my clients I'm working with is in a marriage, a relationship that she says is not suitable. She's been stuck in this relationship for so long. And when we talk about addressing the situation, trying to correct it with her husband, she then starts to reel out all of the worst case scenarios. Well, he's going to be angry. Well, he's not going to listen to me. Well, this means the family is going to break up. How about the children? Where would I live? What will I earn? What money? So what she does, she creates all of these worst case scenarios, and then she comes and gives me, I'm frightened to leave. I'm frightened, David. So she hasn't even addressed all of the things she could be addressing. She's just relating to her feelings. Now, what's happening in that situation, rather than dealing with something in her authenticity, in her truth, in her honesty, she's looking through the lens of her emotions. So now she's been stuck, and she will be stuck in that situation. That situation cannot change for her, because what's driving her is her fear. I'm frightened. So everything I suggest, I'm frightened. I'm too frightened to do that. Oh, I know how that's going to end up. Oh, I know how that's going to work out. But you don't know. Because if we can get you to address these situations in a more balanced, authentic way, then perhaps the outcome will be different. Perhaps it won't be different, but you will be in a more authentic way to deal with the outcome, rather than being locked and blocked and frozen in this situation that by your own example is not working for you.
And I can see how that example, I mean, I would imagine if you're out there, you're watching this, if you can relate to this in terms of your relationships, please do comment below. But I imagine people can also get stuck in careers they don't like, or in other areas of their life they don't like, because they are being driven by emotions, red light emotions that they are running away from. And so they stay stuck in situations which are not authentic for them, and we're not allowing them to flourish, or are stagnating for them because they believe, they've decided that staying stuck, staying in a not great situation is the best form of emotional safety, because they are concerned, they're worried that doing something different is going to be even worse.
But they're worried.
Put them at risk emotionally.
But they're worried, Alex. I'm using your words. They're worried and they're frightened, but that's still an emotion. So even if you stay where you are because it's familiar, it's still you're creating an emotion. So it's a lose-lose situation for you. And then if I speak to somebody who's in a career and we say, okay, so let's look. I'm not saying you hand in your notice or storm into the office and say, that's it, I'm leaving. But let's have a look at other careers. Let's have a look at re-education. Let's have a look at doing something else. Then they'll start reeling off all of the worst case scenarios. Well, I can't do that because of this. I can't do that because of that. I can't do this because of that. And all of the time, what they're doing is creating layers and layers of emotion. And that emotion gets them frozen into where they are. And then they say, well, it's easier to stay where I am. It's never easier. It's familiar. But remember, as Alex has just pointed out, staying where you are is not that you're happy and you're creating a green light emotion. You're still creating a red light emotion.
I guess we perceive it wrongly as the lesser of two evils.
Thank you. That's what people see. This is the lesser of two evils. And that's what they say to me. And I say, well, where's the evil? It's the lesser of what you perceive. That's all it is. Well, it's you're doing it to you. Can you see? This is nonsense. You're creating these two stories. Neither of them are real. And then you are the victim of the story that you created, and exactly what you said. It's what I heard 2 days ago. Well, this is the lesser of two evils. There's no evil here. You're an amazing human being. You're a spiritual being. You should be living your life and flourishing, not stuck behind two monsters and you frozen and you can't move.
I think though, David, when people say it's the lesser of two evils, what they actually mean is it's the least emotionally uncomfortable or painful outcome.
That's exactly
what they mean. That's the evil. It's the emotions. It's those painful, uncomfortable emotions that they're running away from. And that goes back to what you said. That is what's driving their decisions, their choices, their lack of action or action, rather than authentic, logical judgment and decisions and working things through and being open and communicating.
Alex, you explained that so well, much better than me, because what they're saying is, yes, I am experiencing emotion here, being stuck in this job that I hate, or being stuck in this relationship which isn't working. But I now have to do something about this, don't I? But then I can create something so bad, so awful, then that's even worse. So we might as well stay here. And then I'll moan about staying here and make myself ill and worry myself to death and have sleepless nights and start to eat too much or drink too much or do something else, instead of understanding that you are creating those emotions. Get the emotions to one side and look at the situation and let's problem solve. When I'm working with my clients, that's what I'm trying to do. Solve problems. We all have problems here in our lives. The emotions just cloud things over. We call it in our model the maze of confusion. The emotions make things far more confusing. And instead of saying, I say on my videos, as people say, can you give me a tip? Here's the tip. Take this one tip away. Stop saying, I feel. Replace it with one of these three. I think, I choose, I believe. Now, let me give you an example that Alex says. I feel vulnerable or I feel unsafe. I think I'm unsafe. I choose to be unsafe or I believe I'm unsafe. Now, what that does, it moves the accountability back onto you. Because when you talk about your feelings, you're making yourself a victim of your feelings. You create the feeling and then you're making yourself a victim of your feeling. So change it to one of those three. I think, I choose, I believe. Because what that does, it gives you accountability. I believe I'm unsafe here, David. I believe I need to be protected. Then I can ask you now the golden thread question. Why do you need to be protected? Why are you unsafe? You can do this for yourself. You don't need me. You can do this self-inquiry. That's what the golden thread is. Why? Why? What you have to watch. Don't go back to your feelings. Ban the F word. Stop saying I feel. I think, I choose, I believe. And then you get to the core of the problem that you have to deal with. There is a problem there. Absolutely. There's a problem that you have to deal with clearly, authentically, truthfully, with integrity. This is a difficult situation for you, and you have to have a clear mind and clear thinking to get through it.
David, I want to pick you up on this idea of emotional vulnerability, because a lot of people would say, okay, David, if I don't say I feel emotionally vulnerable, but I say I believe I'm emotionally vulnerable in this relationship because I believe I need to be emotionally vulnerable in order to establish a connection with my partner, an intimate connection with them, to open up to them. And that if I don't make myself emotionally vulnerable to them, then it's almost like I'm closed off, I'm shut off from them, I can't connect with them. Is that a misunderstanding?
Well, you must be a mind reader, because I had this said to me for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and I had to ask the lady to go through it 2 or 3 times because I didn't quite understand what she was saying. And she was trying to say that she has to make herself vulnerable so that her partner would love her. I didn't understand. Why do you have to make yourself vulnerable? Because that's nothing to do with your emotions. Why do you have to be vulnerable? Why can't you be a strong, independent person jointly in a wonderful relationship with another strong, independent person? And I couldn't understand what she was doing. And even when you said it, it's like, I've heard that before. I don't understand the logic behind that.
I think the logic, whether it's right or wrong logic, you tell me, is that if I become more intimate with someone in a relationship in terms of sharing personal information or details about myself or my history or my view on things, I am putting myself at risk, because that person may judge me, that person may criticize me, and that is going to make me feel bad. So we're coming back to this.
But surely that just tells you more about the person that you've chosen to spend your life with. So if you're going out with somebody or having a relationship with someone and you share something that's very intimate and very personal, and then they use that against you, I would ask you to check the relationship, because I don't think that's something that when somebody's in a relationship, if they're doing that, that to me, they're actually doing you a great favor, because now they're giving you a warning of how they treat you. So I think if somebody criticize, we're back to one of the core Wu Wei teachings. What other people think of me is none of my business. If they choose to judge you or to criticize you, as you said, then I would question whether I want to be in a relationship with that person.
And that's a positive, as you say,
I think that's a
because that's a
positive.
good early warning sign that
Absolutely.
something is amiss in terms of the way we relate, or this person's belief system, or what they think is appropriate way to communicate that doesn't match with me.
Absolutely.
But,
And that really is what they're doing. Then they're showing you. And this is what I hear. This is another thing I hear with my clients. They say, "Oh, I always knew it wasn't right." Then why did you carry on? Why did you carry on when that person was criticizing you or judging you or comparing you or being judgmental? Why would you want to be in a relationship with somebody, we call it CCJ, criticizing, comparing, or being judgmental? Why would you want to be in a relationship and share your life and share your intimacies with somebody that's just going to store them up and throw them back in your face? That's not a relationship. We did a video last week on love and relationships. That's not relating. That's bullying. That's being superior. That's not a healthy relationship.
And I think, though, David, the reason why people do stay in relationships, unbalanced relationships like that, when they know something's not right, is for the very reasons we talked about earlier in the video, because they perceive being in the relationship with that person, no matter how bad it is the lesser of two evils.
Yes. And
because even though they're experiencing red light emotions in a relationship, or because of the way the person speaks to them, that they perceive not being in the relationship as even worse, as in the emotions I'm going to experience if I'm single are going to be even worse than what I'm experiencing now.
Exactly. So they create a worst case scenario. Well, I can't be single. I can't be on my own. Why? Well, I'll be lonely. Why would you be lonely? Why wouldn't you find a better partner? You're an amazing person. You are fantastic. There is no one in the universe like you. Why would you be lonely? This is what I don't understand. And so it goes back down to their beliefs about them. This is what I said. Don't be stuck on the emotional level. Go deeper onto your beliefs. And as Alex has just explained, that would be a belief about yourself. And that would be one of the 3 lies. I'm not good enough. I can't cope. I can't cope on my own. I'm unlovable. Nobody would ever love me. If I moved out of this relationship, no one would ever love me. This is absolute crazy talk. But this is what you say to yourself. And if you say it to yourself long enough, guess what happens? It becomes a belief. The self-talk is like a self-hypnosis. And this is what people don't understand. It's that they say to me, "Oh, it's just self-talk." Nobody else. I don't say it to anybody else. But if you keep on repeating that to yourself, then that becomes a belief. And then that governs your life. And that creates the emotions. And then you blame it on the emotions.
Just to close that point off about emotional vulnerability, we are saying that if you share intimate details, you open up to someone and they criticize you or don't react in the way that you want or expect, yes, you may experience red light emotions, but the fundamental point is you're creating those emotions. So either use those red light emotions as a positive early warning sign that this individual is, I've got to watch out for this. I've got to look into this more carefully.
Absolutely.
Or reflect on it and thinking, well, is it about my expectations of who I need to be, what I need to be as a partner, that I've got to be perfect, that I've got to please them on every single matter.
Amen. Amen.
So those emotions are good,
they're
whatever.
Good. That's what.
So it's not about vulnerability. It's not about safety. It's not about protection. It's about using the emotions as that valuable signpost.
That's what I always say. Interpret your emotions. Don't react to them. Interpret your emotions. There is nothing wrong with a red light emotion, but know that you are creating it. And then, as Alex has just demonstrated, then ask yourself the golden thread: why? Why am I creating that emotion? So if your partner is using intimate details to expose you, I would want to know why. Why am I in a relationship with somebody who's constantly embarrassing me and showing me up in front of other people and doing whatever they're doing? I would want to know that. I wouldn't want to stay in a relationship with somebody that does that personally. Then you ask yourself, why do I want to stay in this relationship? Here's the golden thread again. Now you're going down to your core beliefs. Oh, because I'll never find anyone else. Oh, because I'd be lonely. Oh, because and you've got to really examine those core beliefs.
And if we get to the point, as we've kind of talked through now, where we do fully accept or logically accept the adult part of us that, yes, I create my emotions. I can't blame another person, another situation, a predicted future event on the emotions that I'm experiencing now or the emotions I'm trying to avoid, because I accept I create them.
Yes.
However, David,
that means but.
However, there is a part of my mind that so desperately would like to avoid experiencing any yucky or uncomfortable or painful feelings ever again for the rest of my life. I logically know what you're saying is right, but there's part of me that just won't let go of this ideal situation.
And this is where we open our arms and give the inner child a big hug, because this is the inner child talking. And this is why when you say to me, of course I logically understand, of course I maturely understand that I create my emotions, but, or as Alex says, however, means you don't understand. You've now created a dual belief system. And unfortunately, this other belief is in control. This is what we call the inner child. This is the part of your mind that's in control. Now, why does your inner child want this emotionally secure, protected life? This goes right back to your experiences as a child. And every experience is unique, so I'm not trying to diagnose your experience, but I'll give you the rough idea, the ballpark picture, the macro picture is that it normally back to our emotional pendulum, and we've done lots of videos on the emotional pendulum. So it'll either be one extreme where the child has had a life, a cotton wool ball life, where everything was done for them, where they were totally cosseted and looked after, and some of my clients have been like that. And of course, that doesn't prepare them for the reality of real life, because they could just cry and make a noise or be upset or have difficulty at school or whatever, and their parents would react bang and go and sort it out for them. But there's another end of that pendulum, and this is the end of the pendulum where a lot of my clients are, where they haven't had good parental guidance, good parental teachings, not bad parents, but parents with very poor parental techniques. And so they've looked around and they've seen their friends and they've seen other people and they've watched films and they've read books and they've seen television about this lovely life like the Brady Bunch, where everything is nice, and they want a bit of that and they think they deserve this. So they have these two ideals of the end of the pendulum where they live a life, I call it a utopian life, like a Disney world, where they don't experience any red light feelings, where everything just unfolds naturally, just the way that they want it, how they want it, when they want it, so they have this misguided world view, this mindset. And of course, it doesn't happen, so they create the emotions. This is what they're doing is when they create the emotions. They're not accepting the reality of what it is. They're not learning and being accountable and learning the life skills that we call life lessons to be able to function correctly in that life. They're following another kind of path, which will always keep them unbalanced.
So what you're saying is that the concept of emotional safety and emotional protection is an inner child concept.
It is.
it's a false reality. It's a myth,
It
basically, as
is.
we said at the top of the video,
Absolutely.
because it's based on this Disneyland scenario, which it doesn't exist and can never be achieved. And the flip side of that is, if we're not in that Disneyland scenario of safety and protection, we are emotionally vulnerable. We are
Absolutely.
experiencing extreme red light emotions that are coming from other people, other situations, possible worst case scenario outcomes. That's the way the inner child views life, through that lens
Absolutely.
of like black and white. So
Absolutely. Right and
emotional
wrong.
vulnerability or emotional safety and protection. And so it's running away from being emotionally vulnerable, and it's running towards and manipulating and trying to control and do everything it can to move into that zone of emotional safety and protection, which doesn't exist.
And it doesn't exist. And so therefore it's like a drug addict. They're looking for the next fix. And so that's why they use their emotions. They say, you don't understand. I'm hypersensitive. I'm highly sensitive. I'm vulnerable. My emotions are worse. A client said to me just last week, David, my emotions are worse than anybody else's. You don't understand. My emotions are attacking me. I have panic attacks. Think of that lovely word. I love that word. I internally smile when I hear I have panic attacks. So what you're saying is, I create panic and then it attacks me. It actually doesn't make sense. But what they're trying to say is, I'm using my emotions to get this utopian world. But the problem is, it doesn't exist. You can't live in a world where you are emotionally neutral and everything works out exactly what you wanted. I call it future-proofed. You cannot be future-proofed. No one, no human being is future-proofed. You may call it, well, I'm a control freak. I want to know, I want to be in control. But that's being future-proofed. You cannot be future-proofed. That's not even spiritual.
Yeah.
You don't know. But why do you want to be future-proofed? I want to know that I can handle it. I want to think the worst. So if somebody says something to me, I've already said it to myself. See, this is all manipulation, and this is why it gets confused. This is why we love doing these videos. They can be complicated because our minds are complicated. We set up all this deception, this carousel of despair, this say one thing, this paradoxical, this dual belief system. Of course, I know I don't create my emotions, but I think the emotions attack me.
Yeah. And that's the inner child. We are allowing ourselves to be led by our inner child rather than allowing our authentic self or sharing our spiritual self to lead the direction of our life and our life choices.
And so the life lesson here is very important, Alex. So this goes back to integrity, to being accountable, to saying what you want and why you want it. It goes right back, as I said at the beginning of the video. It's all 101 Wu Wei wisdom stuff. Is be true to yourself. Respect and honor yourself. Sit down quietly after this video and write down, what do I want and why do I want it? Is that acceptable in the reality of this world as I live in? Do I believe that I should know everything that's going to happen to me, when it's going to happen to me, how other people should always react, what they should say to me, how they should say it to me, that I should never be criticized, that I should never be judged? And then ask yourself, do I criticize people? Do I judge people? Do I compare people? You see? So you've got to have that integrity, that degree of honesty. And once you start to respect yourself and be clear and clear away the confusions and to be clear on how you want to live your life, and then a wonderful thing happens. The law of attraction kicks in. And then you'll start to draw people into your life that think the same as you. Because if you're thinking this kind of confused way of thinking, you draw those type of people as into your life. So it's very important for you to be very clear. We often say the Wu Wei wisdom is the clarity in a confused world. What we're trying to do is to make things simple, make things spiritual, make it practical. Think about your emotional health. Above all, for you to flourish, above all, for you to live your authentic life, to be in your flow. That's what Taoism means, for you to be in your flow. So to be in your flow, isn't it understandable that first of all, understand what your flow is?
Exactly, David. Thank you. That's absolutely brilliant. And I think it's two stages really from what we've talked about. It's about authentically accepting that we create the emotions, and then it's reparenting the inner child, understanding where the inner child is trying to override that logical, authentic acceptance, and sitting with the inner child, doing all the reparenting techniques that we talk about on so many of our other teachings, which I'll put links below to, and explaining to the inner child that we create the emotions and we cannot live in a utopian world.
And remember, the inner child is not a monster.
Yeah.
He or she is not evil. She's not against you. What she does need is a big hug. She needs kindness, love, guidance, and above all, the truth, honesty, and integrity.
Thank you, David. And I will put links below specifically to two teachings we've done related to this topic. One is on why the inner child doesn't want to get hurt, and the other is on why the inner child wants you to give up. And they are both interconnected with this concept of emotional safety and protection. So if you've enjoyed this teaching, please do comment below or share it with someone else who you think would also benefit. If you'd like to work one-to-one with David on any of the issues we talked about today, David works by Zoom video call with clients all over the world every week, and I will put a link below to more information on David's sessions. And finally, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new videos every week, and we'd love to share your journey with you. Take care. Bye-bye.